We're going to start section 1.5. It's about addition of real numbers. In the next section, we're going to cover subtraction. And then in section 1.7, we're going to cover addition and multiplication of real numbers. So in this section, addition of real numbers is presented in two different ways. First, the book shows you how to add numbers by using the number line. So this is when you can use a graphical way to represent the real numbers and then proceed with the addition by following these rules that are in your book. We are not going to cover this because we want you to start right away with the using algebraic procedures to solve problems. So addition of real numbers for us is going to be it's going to start on page 58. We're going to have two ways to add numbers without using a number line. So the first case is when you add two numbers with the same sign, and the second case is when you add two numbers with different sign. So in page 58, you're going to find these steps. So the first step is you're going to add the absolute values. Then you're going to use the common sign as the sign for the result. This is when you have the same sign. When you have different signs, you're going to work again with the absolute values, but you're going to subtract the smaller absolute value from the greater absolute value, and then you're going to use the sign of the greatest absolute value as the sign for the result. So you're going to understand this better when we go through the different examples. Before starting with the first example for this section, I want to remind you about some rules that we learned in previous courses of algebra, the rules of signs. So this is when you are multiplying. We're going to use these rules because sometimes we're going to have parentheses to remove, and to remove those parentheses, we need to take these rules into account. So when you have two quantities, when you multiply two positive quantities, the result is positive. If you multiply a positive and a negative, you're going to get a negative result. If you're going to multiply a negative and a positive, you get a negative. And also, if you multiply a negative and a negative, you get positive. So this is the same. These are the same rules without using the parentheses. So you have positive times positive is positive. Positive times negative is negative, negative times positive is negative, and negative times negative is positive. You are not going to see this kind of notation in your book. This is something that I use just for me to simplify the steps, to understand what I'm doing, because sometimes adding, especially numbers with different signs, is confusing for students. So I will try to show you a way to do that. And also you are welcome to use your own ways to do the addition of real numbers if you learn a different approach or different way in middle or high school. So at the end of the day, what matters is that you're going to get the right result. So we're going to start with example 3. Example 3 is on page 59. So it says add without using a number line. Without using a number line. And we have 3 cases. We're going to start with the first one. The first one is just negative 11 plus negative 15. So we're going to add these two numbers. This is an addition because we have this sign here indicating that we are adding a negative number and another negative number. So we are adding two negative numbers, but another way to see this is if we break these parentheses by using the rules of signs, because we have here a plus in front of these parentheses. So you can say that positive times negative is going to be negative. So you're going to get negative 15, and you have here negative 11. So that's another way to see this operation, that you have two negative numbers together in some sense. So you are adding two negative numbers. So you are adding two negative numbers. So that's the way that you can read this expression. We are adding two negative numbers. So the rule is you're gonna forget for a moment about the sign. So you just think that you have 11 and 15 and you are adding these numbers. 11 and 15 are the absolute values. So an absolute value is when you don't care about the sign. So you just write the numbers without a sign. So we are adding the absolute values. So if you are the absolute values, you're gonna get, in this case, 26. Then to report the result, you're gonna write this value and you're gonna use the common sign. What is the common sign? In this case, the common sign is a minus because it's a negative. So you need to write this here because that's the common sign. So, and this is the answer. So that's the best way to add two negative numbers. So you add the absolute values and then you use the negative sign for those, for the result, for the sum. So that's example 3. Now we're gonna solve part B for this, for the same example. So we're gonna have here, part B is negative 0.2 plus negative 0.8. So first we're gonna remove the parentheses. So again, positive times negative is gonna be negative. So you're gonna write negative 0.8, negative 0.2. So first you're gonna add the absolute values. So you have 0.2, 0.8. So you're adding the absolute values. You're gonna find that this is 1. Then to report the result, you're gonna write 1.0 and you're gonna use the common sign. So what is the common sign? The common sign is a negative sign. So this is the common sign. So that means that you're gonna write here a negative for this sum. So in algebra, usually subtraction is just an addition. We're gonna cover this in the next section, but this is part B of example 3. Now part C is just negative 3/4 plus negative 1/2. So again, we're gonna remove the parentheses by applying the rule of signs. So we're gonna get positive times negative is gonna be negative. And you have here negative 3/4. So now you're gonna work with the positive, with the absolute values. So you're gonna add the absolute values. The absolute values is just 3/4 and 1/2. So those are the absolute values. So we're gonna add these two. So to do that, you just need to multiply the second fraction by 2 in order for you to get the same denominator. So you're gonna get 2 times 1 is gonna be 2, 2 times 2 is gonna be 4. So now we have the same denominator. So the common denominator is 4. You're just gonna need to add the numerators. So at the end, you're gonna get 5/4. So that's the answer for the sum of the absolute values. So that's the answer. Now you check signs. So you see the common sign. So the common sign is gonna be just negative. So, and that's the result. So now we're gonna continue solving more examples. So we have example 4 on page 59. So now we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna add without using a number line. So again, three parts of this example. The first one is just negative 13 plus 4. So now we have the addition of two numbers with different sign. So in this case, we have two numbers with different sign. So what is the rule? We're going to check our previous rules. So we have here that when we add two numbers with different sign, we're going to subtract the smallest absolute value from the greatest absolute value. So in this case, let's write the absolute values first. The absolute values are 13 and 4. So those are the absolute values. So we don't care about the sign. So remove the sign and you get the absolute value. Then you're going to subtract the smallest from the greatest. So you're going to write 13 minus 4. So that's the rule. You're going to subtract the smaller from the greater. So it's 13 minus 4 is going to be just 9. So we're going to write here the result of the process. And now the rule is that you're going to use the sign of the greatest. So this is the greatest value of the two absolute values. This is the greatest absolute value. So you need to ask, what is the sign of 13? So you go and check that 13 has a negative sign. So you're gonna keep, or you're gonna choose the sign of the greatest absolute value. You're gonna keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. You're gonna keep the sign. So in this case, the greatest absolute value is going to be from this number, and the sign is negative. So that's the answer. So another problem, another part of this problem is negative 0.2 plus 0.8. So again, now we have two numbers with different sign. So we proceed with the difference. We're going to get the difference of absolute values, meaning that we need to write first the greatest absolute value, then the smallest absolute value, and we're going to proceed with the subtraction, with the difference, and we're going to find here 0.6. Then we write here 0.6, and now we're going to look for the sign of the greatest absolute value. The greatest absolute value is this, and the sign is positive. So this is the answer. And one more case to finish this example, and then you're going to have the chance to work this by yourself. So this is going to be part C, and this is negative 3/4 plus 1/2. So first, I'm going to get the difference of the absolute values. So this is going to be 3/4. This is the first absolute value, and this is going to be 1/2. So, and remember, this is going to become 2/4, 3/4. So I have my absolute values from these fractions here. So we're going to subtract the smallest from the greatest. In this case, this is the way. So we're going to get 3 minus 2 over the common denominator. So the answer is 1/4. So we need to write 1/4. Now we need to check the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. This is the number with the greatest absolute value. The sign is negative, so the answer is going to be negative. So we're going to get that. So now let's check what is going to be the next thing that we're going to do. We're going to work now. We're going to combine like terms. So remember, when combining like terms, combining like terms. So this is going to be on page 60. So we have examples. We have example 5. So we just need to simplify an algebraic expression. So combining like terms is just performing the addition of like terms. So we're going to need to check whether the terms have the same sign or different sign. So in the first case of example 5, we have negative 11x plus 7x. So what is the main rule when you combine like terms? So you're gonna do the addition, you're gonna add the coefficients. So that's the clue, add the coefficient. So in this case, we have these two terms, and you can see that these are like terms. So these are like terms because they have the same variable, in this case x, at the same power. So that's the reason that these two are like terms, so we can combine them. Now, to combine like terms, now you need to focus only on the coefficients. So you have to add the coefficients. What are the coefficients here? Negative 11 plus 7. So we're gonna work with the coefficients first. So negative plus 7, this is the addition of two numbers with different sign. So what do? How do you solve this problem? You get the difference, of absolute values. That's the first step that we learned just minutes ago. So this is just 11 and 7. So the greatest absolute value is 11, the smallest is 7. So we're gonna do 11 minus 7, you're gonna get 4. So from here and from here, you get 4. Now you need to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. Of these two, this is the one, this is the number with the greatest absolute value. The sign is negative, so you're gonna write negative. So this is the math involving coefficients. So what is the final answer? The final answer is gonna be negative 4x. Why? Because we are combining x's. So this is the final answer. So that's the first part. Now let's work on the second part. The second part is 7y plus negative 12z plus negative 9y plus 15z. So that's the new problem to solve. So the first thing is that we're going to remove this parenthesis. So we have 7y, then positive times negative is going to be negative 12z positive times negative is going to be negative 9y, and then we have just 15z. Then we're going to do some grouping. We're going to group like terms, so meaning that we're going to put first the y's, 7y, negative 9y, and then we're going to put the z's, negative 12z, positive 15z. Now we know that we can combine these two, and we can combine these two. So to combine them, again, we're going to work with the coefficients. So we have 7 minus 9 in this case. 7 minus 9 is just two numbers with different signs, so we need to get the difference. The difference of 9 and 7 is just 9 minus 7 is going to be 2. So you write 2, and then you keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. This is the number with the greatest absolute value, so you're going to write negative 2. And finally, you are working with y, so you're going to write a y here. On the other case, we have coefficients negative 12, positive 15. Again, we have two numbers with different signs, so we need to get the difference of these two values, the difference of this, the difference of the absolute values of these two numbers. So we're gonna get 15 minus 12 because 15 is greater than 12, so you're gonna get 3. So we're gonna write here 3. Now we need to look for the number with the greatest absolute value. The number with the greatest absolute value is this. The sign is positive. And finally, you just write the corresponding variable. So the final answer is just negative 2y plus 3z. So that's the answer for this problem. Okay, we have one more case corresponding to this example. So let's go on that. So this is part C. So this is going to be 3 times 7x plus 8 minus, no, plus minus 25x. So this is part C. So the first thing is we need to remove parentheses. In this case, we're going to apply the distributive property. So we're going to multiply 3 and 7x. You're going to get 21x. Then 3 times positive a is going to be positive 24. Then we have positive times negative is going to be negative, then 25x. So first, we're going to remove parentheses, is where we just did. So we need to apply the distributive property and the rule of signs. That's important. Positive times negative is negative. Positive times positive is positive. Positive times positive is positive too. Now we're gonna do grouping. We're gonna do grouping of like terms. So we're gonna write 21x minus 25x. These go together because these are like terms, plus 24. Then we're gonna combine these two. We're gonna write just the coefficients, 21 minus 25. This is the case where you have two numbers with different signs, so we need to do we need to get the difference. We're gonna write first 25. This is the greatest absolute value. Then 21. Then we perform the difference. We get 4. Then we look for the number with the greatest absolute value. This is the number with the greatest absolute value. So we're gonna write that sign here. Then we are working with x's. We need to write the x here. And finally, plus 24, because we don't do anything with this because this is a constant term and there is no another term that is going to be its light term. So that's this is the last part. So now you're going to work some exercises, and that's the end of this section. So we're going to work problems from 1.5 exercise set on page 63. So there are several exercises. So you're going to work number 24. This is just 13 plus -5. Then 30 is just -6.3 plus -5.2. Then we have 34 is just -5/6 plus 1/3. Then we have problem 40, 60 plus -50 plus -30 plus 25. So when you have several numbers with different signs, what you usually do is you can add all the positives and you can add all the negatives first. And then you're going to end up with a positive number and a negative number, and then you know how to proceed. So at the end, you're going to add a negative number and a positive number. Okay, so that's just a recommendation. So you're going to simplify the following problems. So we have 48, -19x plus 10x. Problem 50 is 26y plus -14y. 52 -9a plus -13a. 54 5y plus -11z plus -15y plus 20z. Then we have 58 is just 13x plus -9y plus -17x. So this is a negative plus 20y. And finally 60 is 7 times 3y plus 5 plus -25y. So at least solve these two problems from this part and solve problem 40. So you need to turn in to me these 3 problems when you submit your classwork. Once you finish watching this lecture. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to solve these problems, and then we're going to continue with the next section. We're going to start now section 1.6. It's about subtraction of real numbers. So this section starts on page 65, and it's just going to be more of the same because we started using the rule of signs before, so that was a great help. So, and the other thing is that subtraction is just an addition of two numbers with different signs, so that's subtraction. So subtraction can be seen as the addition of two numbers of quantities with two numbers or with different sign. And we know how to do this problem. So we're going to start right away with example 1 on page 66. The directions are very simple. We need to do subtraction. So the first one, we have 7 minus 10. So you can see here that this is the addition of two numbers with different sign. So what are the rules to do this addition? If you remember from the previous section, we're gonna get the difference. We're gonna get the difference of the absolute values. So what are the absolute values? We have 7, we have 10, those are the absolute values, so we need to get the difference. So we proceed subtracting 7 from 10, because 10 is the greatest and 7 is the smallest. So 10 minus 7 is going to be 3. So then the second part is you're going to keep the sign. You're going to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So the answer is 3, and then we have two numbers here. What is the number with the greatest absolute value? So 10 is the greatest absolute value. So, and what is the sign of 10? The sign is the negative sign, so that's the final answer. So that's part A. Now, part B, we have 5 minus 6. So again, we're going to proceed as we did before. We need to remove parentheses. Remove parentheses by using the rule of signs. So what is negative times negative is going to be positive. We have 5, we have 6, and this is just very simple addition, because we are adding two numbers with the same sign. When you are adding numbers with the same sign, you just add the absolute values, which is just 11, and you keep the sign, or the common sign. You keep the common sign because they have the same sign now. So that's the answer for this problem. Finally, we have part C. Part C is negative 9 minus negative 3. So we're going to do the same thing. We need to remove parentheses. So if you remove parentheses, you're going to get negative times negative is going to be positive. You get 3 here. You get negative 9 here. Now you have the addition of two numbers with different signs. So you need to get the difference of absolute values. So we have 9 and 3. So you're going to write 9 minus 3 because 9 is the greatest, 3 is the smallest. 9 minus 3 is 6. So the answer is 6. But now you need to keep the sign. So you keep the sign. Keep the sign. I'm going to write this many times for you to memorize this. Keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So this is very important. We need to write this many times to memorize it. So what is the number with the greatest absolute value? This is the number with the greatest absolute value, and the sign is negative. So you need to write -6. So that's example 1 from section 1.6. Now we're going to work another example. So we're going to work example 3 now. So example 3 is page, let me see, example 3. Example 3 is on page 67. Page 67. And this is about simplifying. So we're going to simplify. And we have 7 minus -5 minus 11 minus 6 minus 19. So a lot of negative signs here. So the first thing, we need to remove parentheses. Remove parentheses. How? By using the rule of signs. So we're going to start writing 7. Then negative times negative is going to be positive 5. Then we have negative 11. Then again, negative times negative is going to be positive 6. And finally, negative 19. So that's the first step. Now, we're going to add all the positives and add all the negatives first. So this is like grouping. So we're going to group these numbers. So we have, this is positive, positive, and positive. So we have 7 plus 5 plus 6. So these are the positive numbers. Then I have negative 11, negative 19. So this is like we are just grouping positive with positives, negative with negatives. Now we're gonna do the addition of all positives and the addition of all negatives. So the addition is just the addition of the numbers with the same sign is just the normal addition. So 6 plus 5 is 11, plus 7 is 18, and you keep the sign that is common to all those numbers. So in this case, 18, and then you're gonna add the negatives. So how do you do that? You add the absolute values, so 11 and 19. So you can have 11 plus 19 because you are adding negatives. So it's gonna be 30. But the common sign of these numbers, because they are negative, is just negative. So you are adding two negative numbers, the answer should be negative. So now we end up with a positive number and a negative number. So you're gonna add now two numbers. So in this step, you're gonna add two numbers with different sign. So we are adding two numbers with this different sign. How you get the difference? So you're gonna get the difference of absolute values. That's the first step. So you have 30 minus 18. So you're gonna get 12. So 12 is the difference of the absolute values. But at the end, you're gonna keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So what is the number with the greatest absolute value? So you have here negative 30, positive 18. This is the number with the greatest absolute value. So that's the sign that you need to keep, negative 12. And negative 12 is the final answer for this problem. So this is example 3. So now we're going to work one more example, and then you have work to do. So this is going to be the end for of section 1.6. So we're going to work now example 5. So let me write here example 5. It's on page 68. This is about simplifying algebraic expressions. So the first one, we have 2 plus 3x minus ax. So this is my algebraic expression. The algebraic expression has 3 terms, but only 2 are like terms. So these are like terms. So we're going to combine like terms. So we're going to combine like terms. So how do you combine these two? To combine like terms, you just add the coefficients. Remember, we're going to add the coefficients. So what are the coefficients here? One is 3, the other is -8. Now you see that you have two numbers with different sign. So you're going to get the difference. So you're going to get 8 minus 3. So you subtract the smallest from the greatest. So you're going to get 5. So first get the difference of absolute values. So the difference is 5, but you're going to keep the sign. You're going to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So in this case, -8. 8 is the number with the greatest absolute value, and its sign is negative. Finally, we are working with x's. The variable is x, and we just need to write here 2. We don't do anything with this term. So the final answer is just 2 minus 5x. So that's part A. Now part B. Part B is just negative 4x, negative 9y, negative 2x, plus 12y. So that's part B. So first we're going to group like terms. So how do you do that? You just need to write negative 4x, negative 2x. So these two are the x's. Then you have negative 9y plus 12y. So now we're going to combine like terms. So that's the next step. We're going to combine like terms. So how do you do that? You work with the coefficients. So you have -4, -2. So you are adding two numbers with the same sign. So you add the absolute values. The absolute values is just the number without sign. So you have 4 and you have 2. So the absolute values are 4 and 2. So you add 4 and 2, you're going to get 6. Then you use the common sign. So you are adding negatives. The answer should be negative. And then you just write the variable x. Now what happens with the y's? The coefficients are -9, +12. Now you have the addition of two numbers with different signs. So what you want to do is you're going to get the difference of the absolute values. So the absolute values is just 12 and 9. So you subtract 9 from 12. So 12 minus 9 is going to be 3. And then you keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. In this case, 12. 12 is positive, then the sign should be positive. Finally, the variable that we are working with is y. So the final answer is just -6 plus 3y. So that's the final answer for this exercise. So we're gonna have now exercise for you to work on. So this is gonna be exercises to prepare for the final submission that you're gonna have to do after you finish watching this lecture video. So let me write the exercises for you. So these are exercises from 1.6 exercise set on page 71. We have the following exercises. So these are 22. So you're just gonna perform the indicated subtraction. And remember, subtractions are just addition. So we have 22 is just 15 minus -15. Then we have 26, the 0 minus 15. Then we have 32, -4/9 minus 1/9. Then we have 36 is 2/5 minus -1/10. 50 is just 4π minus -12π. So these are the exercises. I'm going to ask you to give me the answer at least for these two problems, 26 and 50. Then we have another part, another set of problems. You're gonna simplify now algebraic expressions. So 74 is just 2x minus 10x. 76 is 5 plus 9y minus 29y. 78, 3a plus 7 minus 11a. 80 is 5 minus 7b minus 13 minus 4b. 82, 15 minus 3x plus ax minus 10. And finally, 84 is just -6x minus 9y minus 4x plus 15y. So I want at least these two exercises. So that's the end of section 1.6. So we're going to cover one more section, and that is going to be the end of this lecture. We're going to start section 1.7. It's about multiplication and division of real numbers, and it's on page 74. So as you can see, there are some boxes, green boxes throughout the book that shows just information that is important for you to have in your formula sheet. For example, here you have the product of two real numbers. There is information that is important about the sign of the numbers that you are multiplying. So these green boxes they are very important. So I try to copy some information from the book into your note, but it is good for you to also check any other green box that I didn't just copy directly to the notes. So when you multiply real numbers, what you're gonna do is you're gonna use the rule of signs that you just learned from previous sections. So I'm just going to emphasize this because this is the way that your book shows the rule of signs. So they say on page 74, when the product of two real numbers with different sign is negative always. So if you multiply positive and negative, you get negative, or negative and positive, you get negative in both cases. Negative and positive, you get negative. And when you multiply two real numbers with the same sign, the answer is going to be positive. So same sign, so you multiply positive and positive, you're going to get positive. Or if you multiply negative and negative, you're going to get also positive. So these are the rules that we just learned in the two previous sections. So another information that your book is providing is when you have a lot of factors. So when you are multiplying more than two numbers, so you have a lot of factors, 3, 4, 5 factors. So if any factor is 0, so any of those numbers is 0, the result is immediately 0. So you don't need to spend time multiplying all the factors, and then you find a 0 and you just wasted your time. So look for the factors first. And if you find a factor that is 0, just the answer is 0. So don't waste time multiplying the other factors. When you don't have factors that are 0, then you can also simplify your work if you count the number of negative numbers that you're going to multiply. If the number of negative numbers is even, then you know that the answer is going to be positive. If the number of negative numbers is odd, then the answer is going to be negative. So that's the rule. So let's work a couple of exercises, and then you're going to be ready for the final part of this section. So we're going to start with example 1 on page 75. So example 1 on page 75, we're going to multiply several cases. So the first case is just 6 multiplying -3. So you know the rule, positive times negative is going to be negative. 6 times 3 is going to be 18. So that's the answer. Now let's work the next one. So we have -1/5 times 2/3. So you can see here that you have a positive fraction here and a negative fraction here. So negative times positive is going to be negative. Then you just multiply numerators and denominators. So the final answer is going to be 2/15. So -2/15. So sometimes you're going to need to put the negative sign either affecting the numerator or affecting the denominator. So you can put the negative sign on for the numerator. So in this case, you have the numerator negative and the denominator positive, or you can put the negative sign in the denominator. In this case, you have a positive numerator and a negative denominator. But you cannot put the negative sign on both, because if you do that, then you're going to get a different result. So that's part B. Now part C, you have -9 multiplying -10. So here, negative times negative is going to be positive. 9 times 10 is going to be 90. Then we have another case. So now we have -1.4 multiplying -2. So you just multiply negative times negative is going to be positive, and then you multiply this either by hand or by using a calculator. So 2 times 4 is going to be 8. 2 times 1 is going to be 2. So we have positive 2.8. And the final case is just negative 372 times 0. So here you see that one of the factors is 0. So the answer is 0. So now we're going to work on one more problem, then we're going to be ready for divisions and for the end of this lecture. So this is going to be example 2. Example 2 on page 76. So we're going to multiply again. We're going to multiply. Now our first case is negative 3, negative 1, positive 2, negative 2. So now we have several factors. So we have positive factors and negative factors. So the first thing that we're going to do is going to count. You're going to count the negative factors. So you have 1, 2, and 3. So there are 3 negative factors, and 3 is an odd number. So if you check the rule, when you have an odd number of negative factors, the result is going to be negative. So you can write now the negative and use the absolute value of all factors. So you forget about signs because now you have the sign that results for the entire operation. So I'm just writing the absolute value of all those factors. So now you proceed with the multiplication. 3 times 2 is going to be 6 times 2, 12 should be the answer, negative 12. Now, the second part is negative 1 times negative 2 times negative 2 times 3 times negative 4. So again, you count the negative factors, and you see 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 negative factors. Of course, you need to check whether you have a 0 here, because if you have a 0, everything that we are doing now is a waste of time. But yeah, there were no zeros here. There are no zeros here. So that's the reason I'm counting negative factors. I found 4 negative factors. This is an even number of negative factors. So that means that the answer is going to be positive. So now I'm just going to write the absolute value of those numbers, and then I'm going to proceed with the multiplication. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, times 4 is 48. So the final answer is just 48. So that's multiplication. Division follows the same rules that multiplication. So we're going to write here now division. So this is described on page 76, division of real numbers. So there is a definition. The definition is on page 77. Is inside of a green box that you can read later. I'm just going to write that A divided by B is the same as A multiplied by the reciprocal of B. That's the definition. So this quantity 1 over B is known as the reciprocal of B, or is also known it is also known as the multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative inverse of B. So in other words, they are trying to tell you that division is just a multiplication. So, and the rules are going to be the same as before. If you, the rules are on page 78. So if you have the division of two quantities with different sign, so the answer is negative. So you have positive over negative, you get negative. If you have negative over positive, you get negative. If you have the division of two quantities with the same sign, then you get positive in both cases. So positive divided by positive is going to be positive. Negative divided by negative is going to be also positive. So you can find these rules on page 78. So I'm just going to solve one more problem, and I'm going to assign you the problems to finish this lecture, or to finish classwork 1C. So we have example 5 on page 78. So this is about division, so we're going to divide. The first case is just 8 divided by negative 2. So again, this is positive divided by negative, so the answer is going to be negative. So we need to write here negative. And 8 divided by 2, so you just focus on the absolute values. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that's the answer. The next one is negative 3 over 4 divided by negative 5 over 9. So you are dividing into fractions, so you have a negative fraction divided by another negative fraction. So negative divided by negative is going to be positive. So we can get rid of the negative signs now. We know that the answer is going to be positive, so you're going to have just 3 over 4 divided by 5 over 9. So you don't need to write the negative sign now because you have the sign for the entire operation. So remember how to solve this division of fractions. You're going to convert this division into a multiplication. So you keep the same first fraction, then you use the multiplication operator, and then you invert also the other, invert the numerator and the denominator of the second one. So now you proceed with the multiplication. 3 times 9 over 4 times 5. So the final answer is going to be 27 over 20 with a positive sign, because that's what we found at the very beginning. Now we have another case. The next case is just negative 20.8 over 4. So here you have a negative over a positive, so you know that the answer is going to be negative. And just divide this either by hand or using a calculator. So you're going to get negative 5.2. So that's the answer for this one. Then we have the next one is D. D is 0 divided by negative 7. So when you have 0 in the numerator, so 0 in the numerator, the answer is 0. When you have 0 in the denominator, the answer is undefined. So don't forget these rules. When you have 0 here, is 0 the answer. But if you have 0 here, regardless the number that you have in the numerator, if you have 0 in the denominator, that is undefined. So in this case, the answer is 0. Okay? So I'm going to give you just the problems, the final problems to solve for this section. So the final problems are from 1.7, exercise set, page 84. So we have first multiplication, so you're gonna multiply. So number 4 is just -9 times -5. Number 10 is just 0 times -11. Number 14 is -4/5 times -30. Number 18 is -5/11 times 2/7. Then we have 24, -6, -3, and 10. Just multiply these three numbers. Then problem 30, you have -4 times -4 times -4. And problem 34, -9, -12, -18, 0, -3. And for division, you got or the following. You're gonna perform the indicated operation. So we have 48 is 40 over -5. Then we have 52 -66 over -6. And then we have 56 and -8 over 0. And then we have 70 -1/2 divided by -7/9. And 76 is 8 divided by -2/9. So what are the problems that you're gonna turn in? You're gonna work these two. So I think all the divisions are important. And finally 34 and 24, at least those problems you're gonna need to turn in. So there are important tables in your book that you can check just to see all the information that we cover in this section. So there are additional properties of multiplication. This is just formal algebra. So read these, but the important properties are the ones that we covered before. So these are these properties: identity property, inverse property, the property of multiplying by -1, and the double negative property. So this is on table 1.6 on page 79. So there is another table summarizing all the operations that we cover here in this chapter. So we have the summary of the operations with real numbers. So you have everything for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So read this, and this is important to understand. So this is on page 81. And with that, we finish this lecture.